Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into this week's edition of my top waiver wire targets and streamable defenses for week 14. Quick apology, this video is coming out a little later than normal. My Tuesday schedule, I'm running a little behind. Had to go drop the car off after my day job today to get some repairs done at the shop. So I do want to go ahead and address that. That's why this is going to be posted just slightly later than normal. With that being said, congratulations if you're watching this video. I'm going to go ahead and assume that you're in the playoffs unless you are in a league that doesn't start their playoffs for another week. Yeah, so let's go ahead and dive into today's video, starting with my top waiver wire targets. As a reminder, these players, they do have to be available in 50% of the leagues on ESPN, so there's a good chance you can put a claim in for them tonight. Or if you miss out on any players, you can put in you can pick up these players after the waivers if they are still available. Before I dive into these players, one thing I'm going to remind myself to remind you guys tomorrow. I'm a big believer. One of my personal rules for the playoffs is playing the players that got you there. Don't overthink yourself. Even if there's a tough matchup on the paper, I'm always going to play the players that got me to the playoffs. So ideally, you're not picking up anybody off the waivers to play this week unless you are dealing with an injury at a position, or maybe if you've been streaming the quarterback or tight end position throughout the year. With that being said, my quarterback ad of the week, I'm going to go with the guy I think that you could trust. I feel like he's a safe option. It's going to be Sam Darnold. He's only rostered on 43% of the rosters right now. This past weekend against the Falcons, he threw for 249 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. When you look at the last 6 games from Sam Darnold, he's thrown for at least 240 passing yards in 4 of those 6 games. When you look at his last 3 games, he's finished with at least 2 touchdowns in 2 of his last 3 games. Now he's facing a Colts defense this weekend where they've allowed the 12th fewest points per game, so they against the quarterback position around the middle of the pack. But you got to keep in mind, Charvarius Ward's highly likely not going to be in this game because he just suffered his 3rd concussion. I'm doubting that Sauce Gardner is going to make his return. It did sound like that's more or at least a 2 to 4 week injury for him. So the Colts are going to be down their top 2 cornerbacks against Jackson Smith-Njigba. So this could set up for a big afternoon for Sam Darnold against Indianapolis. My running back out of the week, he was on it last week. This is more of a handcuff for Kieran Williams. So if you're a Kieran Williams manager and you made the playoffs with him, if you don't have good running back depth, I would highly suggest picking up Corum so you do have an option to turn to if Williams does suffer an injury during the playoffs. Corum's only rostered on 22.1% of the rosters right now. This past weekend against the Cardinals, he had 12 rushes for 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had a reception for 3 yards on 1 target. What you do like about it, he already has a role in the offense as the backup running back. He's gotten at least 7 touches in the last 7 games for Los Angeles. I don't think he's a sneaky flex play. He does have a tough matchup against the Lions, who have allowed the 2nd fewest points per game against the running back position. But this is more of a handcuff pickup for Kieran Williams managers in the playoffs. My wide receiver ad of the week, this rookie wide receiver has been very impressive to me over the last few weeks, and it looks like he's kind of taken over the role. DJ Moore doesn't really get a lot of targets anymore underneath this new offense with Ben Johnson. So I do like the rookie wide receiver Luther Burden III. He's only on 15.8% of the rosters right now. This past weekend against the Packers, he had 4 receptions for 67 yards on 6 targets. He's gotten at least 5 targets in the last 4 games. What's interesting is it looks like Ben Johnson's just trying to get the ball in his hands because he has also had at least 1 rushing attempt in the last 3 games. Now, he does have a tough matchup on paper going against a Browns defense who are tied for the 10th fewest allowed points per game against the wide receiver position. I wouldn't be looking to pick up Burden off the waivers and play him this week unless maybe a Dunze gets ruled out again. But with that being said, if you are looking for some wide receiver depth options to have in case you suffer any injuries in the playoffs, I think Burden would be a good roll of the dice to add to your bench. My tight end of the week, he's been on here multiple times over the past month and a half, but I still do like that rookie tight end for Chicago, Colston Loveland. He's only rostered on 39.7% of the rosters right now. Against the Packers, he had 4 receptions for 29 yards and a touchdown on 5 targets. He's gotten at least 5 targets over the last 3 games. In those 3 games, he's gotten at least 4 receptions in 2 of those games. He's also gotten at least a touchdown in 2 of the last 3 games as well. Going against the Browns defense, around the middle of the pack against the tight end position. So if you've been streaming the tight end, I think Colson's kind of playing himself in a decent streaming option for this week, just because he's gotten at least 5 targets over the last 3 games. My flex ad of the week is got the Packers wide receiver that made his return from his lengthy absence due to that injury he suffered in week 1. But Jaden Reed, he's only rostered on a 42.1% of the rosters. This past weekend against the Bears, he had the 4 receptions for 31 yards on 4 targets. What I like is LaFleur does like to get the ball in his hands in creative ways. He had 2 rushes for 22 yards as well. Now, he does have a tough matchup on paper. The second fewest allowed points per game against wide receivers this season with Denver's defense. So, I'm not literally looking to pick up Reed to put him onto my starting lineup unless you're very desperate. But like I said, with Burden, if you do not like your wide receiver depth for the playoffs, I think Reed's an option for you to pick up and add to your bench for a playoff run. That wraps up my waiver wire targets for week 14. Moving into my streamable defenses, as a reminder, these defenses, they do have to be available in at least 50% of the rosters on ESPN, so there's a good chance you can pick them up tonight or throughout the week. And then, as I always like to remind people, streaming defense is a high risk, high reward play with your fantasy lineups. I personally do it just because I'm always trying to shoot for the ceiling. So yeah, with that being said, my number 1 streaming option I like this week is going to be the Jaguars against the Jets. Jaguars are only on 41.2% of the rosters right now. We don't know who's going to be the quarterback for the Jets this week. Tyrod Taylor got hurt in the game this past weekend. Justin Fields was ruled out in that game. They are down to a undrafted rookie quarterback. So if it's going to be him that ends up starting for New York this weekend, that makes me love the Jaguars even more prior to all the stats that maybe make this more of a ceiling play. This is a home game for Jacksonville, so I do like to factor that in. Why I do like this is there's the ways that you can get a ceiling play because the Jacksonville Jaguars are actually tied for the second most takeaways this season. So you're looking for those potential rookie mistakes if that's who ends up starting, where you can get a turn like a fumble recovery or an interception return for a touchdown, and then where you can rack up points here and there from the defense is the Jets are tied for the 3rd most sacks allowed. So I like the chances of Josh Hines, Allen getting after whoever the quarterback is, getting those sacks, and ideally helping those force into turnovers. My number 2 streaming defense I like this week is going to be the 49ers against the Titans. 49ers only rostered on 22.8% of the rosters. This is a home game for San Francisco, so I love the factor in that. And then it's just because this is a high ceiling potential with a high floor. The Titans have allowed the 2nd most sacks in the NFL, so I like the idea that they're going to get pressure on Cam Ward and maybe force him into a rookie mistake or 2. And then what gives it a floor is the Titans offense is only scoring 15.5 points per game this season. That is the 2nd fewest in the NFL. And then my number 3 streaming defense I do like the Bears defense against the Browns. Bears only rostered on 13.4% of the rosters right now. This is a home game in December for Chicago, so I like to factor in that their defense can play great in front of that home crowd as they make this push to finally make the playoffs, and how long it's been since Chicago's made it. What you like about it is the Bears defense actually leads the NFL with the most takeaways. So I'm looking for Shedeur Sanders to make a rookie mistake or 2 where you can maybe get a interception return for a touchdown, at least one of those. And then what can give you a high floor play if you want to go with Chicago is the Browns are only scoring 17.2 points per game this season. That is the 4th fewest in the NFL. My number 4 streaming defense I like. This is more of a high ceiling, low floor play. This is a high risk, high reward play because we don't know what Cowboys defense will get, even though they have been playing much better over the last month or so. But I do like the Cowboys against the Vikings. Cowboys only rostered on 12% of the rosters right now. This is a home game for Dallas. I also like to factor in at this point of the season. Basically, Dallas has to win out, I believe, to have a chance to potentially make the playoffs. So the Cowboys have something to play for in this matchup. And then they're just going against the offense that, yeah, they had a great game, or not a great game, but they had a solid game against a bad Commanders defense. But at the end of the day, the Vikings do have the most turnovers in the NFL. And then they also are tied for the third most sacks allowed in the NFL. And then we're just going to have to see if J.J. McCarthy can actually stack performances back up to back-to-back games, or is he going to revert back to the J.J. that we saw that was turning the ball over multiple times in games throughout November. My number 5 streaming defense to wrap this up, I will go with the Panthers against the Saints. The Panthers only rostered on 3.9% of the rosters right now. The Saints are actually tied for the third most turnovers. Panthers are coming off a bye week, so they should be more prepared for what the Saints did to the Bucs last week. I think they'll be able to be prepared for those type of plays. And then I do think this gives you a high floor too, because the Saints at the end of the day are only scoring 15.8 points per game this season. That's the third fewest in the NFL. So yeah, that wraps up my top waiver wire targets and streamable defenses for week 14 of the NFL season. You guys will get me back tomorrow for my top starts and sits. That video will probably come out a lot earlier than normal though, with this one being late. I can probably get tomorrow's video out to you a lot earlier, just because I am working remotely while my car is in the shop. With that being said, if you enjoyed today's video though, hit the like button. Follow me on all my social media platforms at Cody Talks NFL on X, TikTok, and Instagram. Wish you guys all the best of luck this week, but you'll get me tomorrow too. So I'll talk to you then. Peace out.